Okay, starting here with the Times Ireland edition, one of the last episodes of the Times Ireland edition as it is. Coming up, Primroses, Roscommon regain Connacht title and make it a weekend from hell for Galway. Pogba ready for a United exit. He's gone public and said he wants a new challenge. And jockey fails breath test. This is an interesting story. Oisin Murphy, the leading flat jockey this season, was stood down from riding at Salisbury yesterday after failing a breath test. It's the timing so close to Royal Ascot is dreadful for the 23-year-old Irishman, who's the rising star of flat racing and seen by many as a successor to Frankie Dettori, the celebrated three-time champion jockey. So they don't test routinely and they don't target test, but they can test whenever they want. And he missed 5 rides yesterday. Now here's the thing, unless he was a long way over the alcohol limit, he won't face any further sanction. See, I was interested in this because, like, how over the limit do you have to be? And the answer is, the threshold for a jockey is 17 micrograms of alcohol per 100 millilitres of breath, just under half of the limit for driving a car. So he was fine to drive, but just not fine to be on a horse. You can imagine, like, 17 millilitres, 17 micrograms of alcohol per 100 millilitres is not a lot.
No.
I mean, most days you'd probably fail a breathalyzer test if that was the threshold for us here.
100%. Like,
sorry,
please,
I set that whole thing up.
Please don't bring in any horse racing authority sort of levels into off the ball. It's a tiny threshold. It's tough. Like, I mean, that could be a few glasses of wine the night before a race, and you might actually show up.
Exactly. It seems
positive.
I mean, I'm sure the thing is that addiction is highly prevalent among flat jockey and I think to a lesser degree, but not that much lesser, national hunt, because they've got to make weight. They're constantly hungry all the time, and so and also the adrenaline stuff. We had Johnny Murty in here talking about, just how difficult it is to maintain a balance in your life when you're doing that, and so many of the other jockeys have had it as well. So I see why they do it, but at the same time, the level is pretty low. Like, if you're okay to drive a car, you're okay to get to work, and at work, I don't know. I presume there's a very specific, thought-out scientific reason for that threshold, but hopefully it wasn't too much more.
The Irish Times this morning leads with Roscommon. Madcap final finishes with another Roscommon raid. That's Enda Smith up on the shoulders of his fellow county people. It's very like it's almost like the exact same photo that was published in 2017. It was a very famous one of Enda Smith up on the shoulders of his county people. This felt just a little bit more important to Roscommon. Deserved.
It did. It felt like they were building towards it over the last number of years.
Yeah. Sean Moran has written Little Comfort in South after drama in the East, emulating Saturday's epic Leinster climax proves impossible in Munster fixtures. And this story, which I'm sure we'll get to in Transfer Radar later on, Pogba considers new challenge as speculation mounts on future. He was in Japan recently, over the course of the weekend, to be specific.
On a promotional visit?
On a promotional visit.
Was he promoting himself or was he promoting Man United?
Himself, I presume. Don't think he was promoting Manchester United in Japan, and I would be a very unusual thing to actually say I want to leave while on promotional duty for Manchester United.
Or else the best piece of engineering that you could ever... There he is there. So there's Pogba alongside...
It was an Adidas gig.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
It's weird, isn't it, that... Is it like a stipulation for joining Real Madrid that you have to speak about joining Real Madrid before you join Real Madrid? It's like the opposite of Fight Club. And Christian Eriksen has done it last week. Paul Pogba has done it this week. It's just like a box. Like, maybe they're actually far more frugal than we give them credit for, Real Madrid. It's like, talk about it there, take 20 million quid off the price tag.
Yeah. I mean, they're paying overly inflated prices anyway, so who knows. Cunningham leads Rossies redemption. A team criticised after last year's Super 8s and a manager cast aside by Galway hurlers leave tribesmen reeling. Martin Brady and Eamon Sweeney. I'm delighted for Anthony Cunningham, one of the game's gents, and now has an amazing track record in 2 sports. Like,
superb.
Which of the Galway jobs do you think they'll try and give him next? Maybe he finishes with the Galway footballers and leads them to redemption at some point in the future.
Well,
maybe he gets the Galway hurling job back again in half a decade.
It's got to be the Galway hurling job if you're comparing the two of them, because ultimately you can be Roscommon manager and you can be better than Galway categorically. Like, it's a bigger job. It could easily be a bigger job than the Galway football job. But the Galway hurling job gives you a chance of winning All-Irelands. Unfortunately, it's a stretch to suggest that Roscommon are going to win the All-Irelands.
Yeah, but the Galway footballers might.
Right now?
No, not next year. In 3 or 4 years' time, no?
I guess bigger population, better structures as a result of that population, and more resources to do things with would probably suggest that. But given the talent that Roscommon have now, it's not that much of a gap. I wouldn't say that he would ever have any interest in the short term in going back to Galway football, because he's got a really good thing going right now.
Yeah.
It helps as well when you've got footballers from other counties playing for you. So.
Hey.
The back page of the Mirror this morning is Yellow Fever. Frenzied Rossies fans invade pitch twice as Anthony Mastermind's famous Connacht title. That was and fair play to the referee for getting everybody off the pitch.
Yeah, I can believe it.
I don't know how the hell he did it.
I just thought, okay, I'm giving up here, I'm going to blow the whistle and that'll be it. But he didn't.
No, I think they also jumped the gun a little bit on the actual full-time whistle.
Did they?
I think there was fans on the pitch before the full-time whistle came. He picked his battle that time. He was like, I'm 1-0 against these fans. I'm going to blow this thing up. So yeah, that is kind of another symbol of how yesterday was just so unbelievably important to those Roscommon fans.
Bittersweet. Injuries to key man take shine off Tip victory. We'll talk about this in the hurling with Michael Verney in just a little while. Tip will have to count the cost of yesterday's attritional win. Sorry about that. Overall Ireland champions Limerick, as both Patrick Bonner-Maher and Carl Barrett are set to miss the Munster final rematch between the sides on the 30th of June in the Gaelic ground. So that was the first of a potential trilogy this year. Bonner-Maher's knee injury didn't look good. Didn't see what happened to Carl Barrett, but
hamstring.
We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And was it a bad?
Don't think it's as bad as feared as it is for Bonner-Maher. Bonner-Maher looks particularly bad, doesn't it?
Okay. United rages Pogba talks up summer exit. Apparently Man United are really keen on keeping him and are going to offer him vice captaincy. Do you know who the new Man United captain's going to be?
The Manchester United captain will be... Who will be?
So Antonio Valencia is leaving.
Yeah.
He's out of contract.
Yeah.
It says in the papers, whether or not this...
Luke Shaw.
I mean, no.
He'd keep David De Gea. David De Gea is your...
That would be ridiculous.
Captain.
Actually young.
Did he just pick like a senior figure?
And maybe it doesn't mean anything and you're not actually captain, but like, is that not sending out the wrong message?
If you keep Paul Pogba, give him the captaincy.
Like, well, you may as well.
I don't think he's going to stay hang around for the captaincy somehow. I think this thing is done, as we can see on the back page of The Sun. Fat's my lot. Pogba says time's right for a new challenge somewhere else. He's an inset photograph there. Paul Pogba looking at a sumo wrestler saying, Jesus, De Gea has put on a bit of weight.
Hey.
Cunning as a cox then is the headline on Roscommon 113, Galway 12 points. And ciao to Sarri ball. Maurizio Sarri out the exit door at Stamford Bridge. He's off to Juventus.
Cunning as a cox. I had to think about that one.
Really?
Just for a minute.
It's a particularly slow start.
For anybody who's just listening to us as a radio show, which of course you can do by just getting on drball.com and clicking the word listen, what's Fat's my lot?
Fat's my lot is Paul Pogba surrounded by 4 sumo wrestlers. United's ace Madrid message. So they're all putting their hands up. Paul Pogba's doing kind of a bit more of an extravagant pose. I guess the sumo wrestler pose is what you could do. I'm not quite sure if these particular sumo wrestlers are top sumo wrestlers or what. I haven't really looked into that. So maybe it was actually a collection of world-class athletes and Paul Pogba was just the only one we recognise. Yet to confirm that.
Here's the front page of the Examiner for you. 3 and in, and it's a picture from the Tip Limerick game. Clare gone as summer starts in earnest for Tip, Limerick and Cork. Anthony Daly, hard for Clare to take, knowing Limerick could have done more. I mean, Clare put themselves in that situation by, not being great up to this point. The rise and fall, delight for Dubs, but what now for Galway hurling? There's a bit of needle about how the hurling championship, which was the perfect championship this time last year, like all the problems are gone, don't touch this ever. Now it's teams going out on points difference. They're like, well, that's not really fair, is it? And Limerick could lose 3 games and be in an All-Ireland quarter-final and then go on and win an All-Ireland and everybody would be like, I mean, I think it's totally fine because they're the rules of engagement when you start the competition. Everybody knows that.
It's tough.
But it's like, we just realised that this is the thing. Anyway, victory march. Newton shines as Cork retain Munster crown and Rossies rejoice. Cunningham's crew stun tribesmen on their home patch. Home advantage, I mean, in Gaelic games, means nothing. It's not like you have an away supporters end, which is a tiny fragment of the population of the general stadium and all the tickets are exclusively sold. There were as many Roscommon people, it seemed to me, certainly when they were invading the pitch, as there were Galway people. Fair enough, the wind whipping in off the Atlantic was something apparently only Galway could master, but it turns out it's pretty windy in Roscommon too, because it's right beside Galway. So, no?
It makes a small difference. It depends what the stadium is. Like, you would have thought the Pearse Stadium would have had a bit more of an impact for Galway. Like, I don't know, like it depends where you're talking. If it's a smaller ground perhaps, then perhaps you do get it. Like, was the Kildare, Newbridge and Orwell thing a big boost for Kildare last year? No, because Mayo had the support there. Croke Park and the Dubs, is that a big support? Well, that's the isolation of a set of fans behind the goal.
Brilliant example of the Newbridge and Norway thing. It was the underdog status that Kildare had, despite the fact that there had been this momentum of argument rolling behind their push. Now, it counts for nothing when you're on the pitch unless you actually are able to transfer that into some meaning. Roscommon were underdogs despite the fact they'd beaten Mayo, who were like third, fourth favourites for the All-Ireland. They got no credit, they got no respect for being really good. That means more than home advantage, surely.
Yeah, well, of course it does, but it doesn't necessarily completely destroy the idea of home advantage. Home advantage. Like if Roscommon had that game in the Hyde yesterday, for example, would they have won by more?
I mean, I don't know.
You don't know. Like that's.
I don't think that it.
It doesn't mean that home advantage is completely pointless just because there was a lot of Roscommon people there and just because Roscommon won. Like you can still win against home advantage.
I think that it counts in sports where it obviously matters for Dublin because they do have that behind the goals exclusive area for the team to shoot into for 40 minutes. I just feel like in GAA when it's at provincial level and they're in provincial grounds that there aren't enough games. You don't play 20 times in your home ground every year, you know? Like you don't build up that same level of familiarity with every blade of grass. It's like it's a fairly minor thing. It certainly wasn't the 3 points that the bookmakers had pre-match. Here's the Irish news for you this morning. It's an attendance story. 2019 crowd figures show a recovery, but provincial attendances still fall below average for the decade. Yeah, so there's been people trumpeting the fact that Ulster football has had massive amounts of people going to the games. But the first paragraph here says, even with a significant rebound from last year and a sellout 29,000 crowd due in a reduced capacity Clonus for the Ulster Senior Football Championship, attendance figures for this year's provincial championship are still below average for the decade. Which is pretty remarkable because that includes a replay as well. So that's not a great sign, because if you're relying on Ulster football to be the one thing that says the provincial championships are still great, or a pitch invasion, Marty Marcy's commentary was like, oh, this is, whatever you say about the provincial championships, you've got to have this. It's like, well, you know, you could have this a lot all over the country, as opposed to random once every 3 years when Roscommon decide to invade the pitch. Like,
I do wonder if it's going to take a year for that bounce to happen. Like the attendances in Munster hurling are extraordinary, obviously, this year. After last year, 40,000 yesterday almost in Thurles is a ridiculous number really for a game that was essentially going to be shadowboxing. And I do wonder if we're going to see the bump from the Ulster Football Championship next year, that people will be like, right, okay, plan my summer around this football championship, because last year it was pretty good. I might actually just go through the examiner here, because there's one really interesting kind of idea here from John Fogarty, because you mentioned the Tipperary injuries yesterday, and John Fogarty quotes Ken Hogan, who was on Tip FM yesterday, who asked, I hope they have the right boots on. And the conditions in yesterday's game didn't help the quality of the game, says John Fogarty here, but it may have been a contributory factor in both Cathal Barrett and Patrick Maher's picking up injuries. The slippery conditions looked to have made Barrett slide for a ball worse than it might have been, and it remained as dry as it was a throw-in. Maher might not have been so exposed to sustain his injury. Fogarty's asking the question, should there be like a minute to actually change your studs when the rain just starts pummeling down all of a sudden? That there may have been a factor here that perhaps their footing wasn't quite right when they go into those injuries, and ultimately one, if not two of those injuries look particularly serious.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to a couple of the we'll start with the Guardian here, and the cricket. Yadav piles on the pain for Pakistan. Spinners 2 wickets and 3 balls, and century from Sharma give India a thumping victory in bitter rivals World Cup clash with a humongous television audience, as you can imagine, yesterday. And the back page of the Racing Post, all changes, Sarri seals Juve move, going, gone, to going and going beside Paul Pogba and Frank Lampard, the gone beside the face of Maurizio Sarri.
Okay, so you're listening to OTB AM, Ireland's only sports breakfast show. It is 7:53 this morning. We're going to be talking US Open later on. We have a very exciting trip coming up for all you golf fans out there to tell you about. We're heading for some winter sun and some top-class golf. You can join us, the OTB crew, along with special guests Kevin Caban, Kieran Donaghy, Peter Lowry, and a few more. We're taking on 2 of the best courses on the planet. That's the Yas Links and the National. The National is where Shane Lowry won the HSBC at the start of the year, and apparently Yaz Links is even way better than the National. It's like one of the top 50 courses in the world. It's the first ever Off the Ball Open, and it's taking place this November. 5 nights in a 4-star hotel, a Peter Lorre golf clinic, a gala dinner, and of course a world famous OTB Roadshow from the 17th to the 23rd of November in Abu Dhabi. You can sign up now at offtheball.com/open and make sure you get your deposit in for that one quickly, because it's going fast.